end of the day, it's the passion really that keeps me. For me, the passion and my people keep me going. I would say the business school is for me was, and I used to tell people this, that is what you really make of it, right? I went to Oxford, and I would always define Oxford as a chocolate factory. One thing I noticed in my Oxford application process was, I just really had to tell my story well. There are a bunch of essays you have to write. And I always tell people, when people say, am I, I get people come to me and say, Chika, do you think I can get in? Am I the kind of person? And I say, tell me your story. And when they do, I'm like, look at that beautiful story right there. Like, I'm like, you just need to, it's really storytelling. Technology also helps us give better support. So people are calling in, because of technology, as they're calling in, their details are coming up on your screen, or you are calling people details. You are able to offer that help at the time, as opposed to, if it was manual and you had to go and start checking some files. Oh, hold on, let me get your file, that kind of thing. But you are able to offer support at an instance. You are able to also help people, because one of the things about debt management is, it's not like there are cases we've seen where it's not like the people don't want to repay, but it's just a lot of things happening in their lives. And if you could remind them, if you could just help them organize their, should I say, their schedule, they will make that repayment. And that's where technology helps you. So you can say, okay, you know what, I'm going to make this payment next week Thursday. Okay, next week Thursday we schedule, a promise to pay, we schedule all that, you get a reminder.
Meet Echika Obijiaku, who's a serial entrepreneur and founder of Mwanga, which is a debt recovery and outsourcing firm.
Thank you so much, Echika, for joining me in this episode of Karishma Connect. It's a pleasure to have you. Can't wait to know more. And thank you once again for your wonderful time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me here.
Most welcome. Tell me the first question I really ask on Karishma Connect, because you tell your journey the best. So tell me about that journey so far that you've had.
My journey is quite an interesting one. I just go for maybe the professional side, maybe. So I had a BSc in actuarial sciences, from the University of Lagos, Akoka in Lagos, Nigeria. After that, I went on to work in actuarial consulting, with one of the foremost actuarial firms in Africa at the time. Did that for a couple of years. Very interesting. During that time, was able to help a lot of companies with gratuity and employee benefits, valuations, and then wanted to delve into more finance related things. And then I moved to Deloitte. Worked in Deloitte, financial advisory and corporate finance. Generally, it was an interesting year, but it wasn't for so long. And then while I was doing that, I left. After that, I left Deloitte, and already I'd built a passion for really helping people with processes, really helping companies with just thinking through their operations model, because I got to talk to a lot of, clients, even from my time in the actuarial consulting firm Alexander Forbes, and now. And that kicked off maybe the first startup I believe I'd run, with a partner then, and we were trying to help SMEs at the time get investor ready. So work with SMEs, help them to just get ready before they approach the investors. It was interesting. It was good times. Um, but while doing that, I was also involved in a lot of non-for-profit things, because I think personally I'm very, very, very driven by impact. I believe that while we have systems, while we have governments, while we have institutions, we as individuals need to also play our part, in this journey. We as individuals have to be able to just play a quota. And so for me, it's very important to help people emerge, to becoming, um, to actually execute and chase on those dreams they have to make the world a better place. And so I had done that in different, capacities. I had, up until date, being part of a platform called the Women's Entrepreneurship Day Organization. It's a global organization in over 100 countries where we empower, support and, celebrate women in business. And so I ran Nigerian chapter as the ambassador, with a couple of ambassadors, and it was very, impactful. I'd done, I'd worked with youth education platforms just to help them, kind of stretch out, their understanding of leadership. I've done a lot of things. But then again, still in that year after running the first startup I talked to you about, there was this emergence of financial inclusion. It was becoming more popular, there in Nigeria. Because the truth is that before, if you wanted to take credit, you had to go through um, an arm and a leg. It was a lot of things, but there was this emergence of digital lending institutions, and that really made access to credit easier. People could take money easier and everything, but there was a snag, um, and the snag at the time was that not everyone was fulfilling their repayment obligations, which was, a problem for the lenders. I'll go right into it in detail when we talk, more. But I think that that was part of what drove me into the current startup I'm doing today. But we'll talk about it in detail. But from then till now, it's been interesting just helping people with systems, both for profit and non for profit, and even on a personal level, just driving that mentorship groups and just helping a lot of people emerge into, I would say, their purpose has been so interesting, for me. So just throwing it on the professional side. Yeah.
And you grew up in Nigeria?
Oh yes. Oh, that part. So okay, yeah, I grew up in Nigeria, third child of five children. Grew up in a very happy home. I would say my childhood was fun. It was not I think it was growing up. I remember that I started having the ideology that I really wanted a lot of children because of how we grew up. So we're five children. And growing up was so much fun that I felt like, I think I'm going to have five children too, you know. But as I grew up, and then I understood that, yeah, the economy is getting so difficult. You can't manage five children. So when you're going to have kids, you're not going to have five kids. But growing up was fun. I think my parents did the best to just give us. It was an average home, but they gave us we were passed on to us was very good values, so good education, and we just understood that the importance of just being a unit, as a family, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for the family that I came from, and I think a lot of even what marks who I am today are coming from some of the things I learned from my upbringing, or I learned from my parents.
Tell me about Mwanga. How did it start? What was the need? What did you want to do with it? Get right into the details.
Okay, Mwanga. Mwanga is such a special story. So, um, sometime in 2018, I remember that at that time I was running a business development like a project for some company, and but I'd started to kind of understand what was happening in the financial ecosystem. So there was emergence of digital lenders, which was great because people didn't have to fill piles of forms for need for credit from traditional banks. And while that was great and that was going to add to the increase of financial inclusion in Nigeria, there was a snag. People were not fulfilling their repayment obligations. And the truth is that it's a ripple effect on both the lenders, their investors. It's just a whole mess. So that was happening, and delinquencies were rising up until over 60%. So it wasn't very good, for the economy. So at that point, having that idea, I'm like, how do we encourage financial inclusion? Because even if we're driving impact, the whole goal is for people to become a bit of, financially independent, for them to get to the point where they can manage their credit and use it for, purposeful things. We need to encourage those people bringing in the money into the system to keep bringing the money into the system. And so, at that point, we were saying, um, how do we curb high delinquencies? And so luckily, one of still the leading digital lenders, now a digital bank, had reached out to me to talk about the fact that they were having the collection issues. And at that point in time, they had tried other things. They had tried using other methods to try to repay, get the repayment done. But they reached out to me, and so for us, what we did was we had to go through the method to say if we're going to help people repayments, how do we engage them to understand why they need to repay? How do we engage them ethically? And I think for me, it was very big that the repayment or the collection process was going to be ethical. We were not going to encourage financial inclusion and then chase the same people away by predatory collection practices. So, how do we encourage financial inclusion in the system and help people manage this credit, better? So that was the beginning, of Mwanga. Why I chose the name Mwanga, that's a story for another day.
I
Because Mwanga, so the thing is, yeah, but Mwanga is a Swahili word that means light. I think for when I thought about it, I said the purpose of this business is to help businesses that are actually creating impact. How can we support their systems? So we may not have the money they have to start these ideas. We may not have the funds or the structure, but we can be a strong support system. And I think it even embodies who I am as a person, really drive coming into institutions and supporting, really coming into, even individuals and supporting them with such dreams. How can we be a light to your team? How can we be a support system to your team? And so for us, for those digital lenders, what is your biggest process issue? And most of them said, we're having issues with repayments. People are not repaying. So we're going to come in, we're going to work with your team as an extension to your team to help you ethically recover this debt while you are able to scale, keep a good brand name, and then do what you know how to do best, which is lending. And so glad that they gave us that opportunity to come in. And so the name really represented what we were doing in this company. So what we will do is not just ethically collect. What we will do is engage with the customers as much to understand what your customers are saying. Because what I always tell lenders is, I would say, I found out that repayment processes are different for different lenders, right? And so when I talk to the customer of one lender and talk to the customer of another lender, I can pick different things about the modus operandi of those lenders. And so we're able to come back to them and say, hey guys, while you want your repayment, have you taken account of this, this, this? This is what your customers are saying. This is what we think you should do. And one thing I've been, so grateful for is clients that listen. And so it's not just that they're able to get the repayments back, they're actually able to modify their products to now be tailored to the customers. So you find out that customers are happier. We're advising on initiatives for them to carry out to ease the repayment and also make these customers come back to you for more lending. So I think for us, working as lighting company for companies has been great, and we've had very great results in over from inception. 2018, we started pilot operations in 2018 August, and from 2018 till date, Mwanga has been able to help over 1 million people get out of debt. And also doing that, we've done that for over 25 lenders, here in Nigeria. And so for us, we're like, we can see this thing works. It's not perfect. I would not come and tell you here that it's 100% collections. No, it's not, but we have found out that you also need to be able to work with the borrowers properly to be able to get what you need from them. Just because at the end of the day, the goal is how can we build a trustworthy lending ecosystem, here in Nigeria and even up until the rest of Africa. How can we encourage that? So lenders are encouraged to keep lending. Borrowers know that they have an obligation to repay. How do we ethically collect? How do we teach borrowers to use credit responsibly? For us, is the goal. And it's been a trail. It's been interesting to hear different stories, to help people get out of the chokehold of debt, because debt also can have like mental health effect to people, especially where they are. But how do we help them to say, hey, we're not here to harass you, we're here to work with you to repay? So just in summary, that's how Mwanga started. We saw a need in the market. We needed to support the lenders because what they were doing, even especially post COVID and post COVID, there was a spike in, how much the digital lending services actually came in to actually help the system, compared to traditional banks. And so we needed to encourage that. Well, how do we encourage that? We come and we help them solve their biggest problem, repayment.
mentioned clients that listen. As an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
to be able to make yourself heard in a crowd full of people, and that to people that are completely diverse. So you have your
Mhm.
lenders, and then you also have your borrowers who come from
Mm.
Two different mindsets, two different socioeconomic backgrounds, everything that comes with it. How do you think, as an entrepreneur, you navigated that? How did you make people listen?
So I think first thing, thank you for that question. And it's not always easy, but I think first thing is you need to hear what they're saying. What are the pain points of your clients? So sometimes entrepreneurs can just jump in the ring and say, "Oh, you know, I'm good at my job. This is what I do. Just leave it to us." But first of all, whenever we have initial meetings with new clients, the questions we like to ask, like we ask them to even take us through, will say, take us through your lending process. So I am Echika. I come, I download your app. Tell me what I'm going to experience. Take us through your process. And when they take us through their process, we also want to understand what's your biggest pain point? What is it that worries you? So when you hear what it worries them, you find out that you can actually have value added services when you're giving them. So it's not just repayment. You end up doing more for them because if somebody says, "Oh, you know what? We have a repayment problem, but we found out that we're also not getting a lot of, we don't know why, but we're not able to reach our customers. We've had cases where by the time we even engage with customers, we found out that, oh, we told certain lenders, we don't think you should focus on this region because there seems to be a language barrier here. So if you even want to go and give money to people in this region, you have to have point men that can understand the language of these people to communicate with them, or else it's a lost cause. So you have to listen to what they need. And then when you listen to what they need, you have to go back to the drawing board. I personally, and I think I've said on this call, that I feel that every repayment process for a client is different from that of the other client. So we sit down as a team and then we go back to the drawing board to say, well, this is our regular ethical repayment process. What is different for this client? What should we do differently? And so for them, there may be an added service we would give, even at no extra cost. So, Karishma, and that's the thing. Sometimes it's not all about money. So, even at no extra cost, we would do that. And then when we're providing you your report, while we're providing you the collections report, we're also providing, and then this is other things we notice, and we're bringing it, to you. And then when we have meetings, we're able to explain this is what we noticed, this is what we noticed from what you said. We think you should try this, we think you should try that. And so we see ourselves as partners with our clients. We don't see ourselves as, oh, we just want to get the money and then go. We see ourselves as partners with our clients. It's so, you find out that even within the team, whoever is the project manager feels so vested, in that project because they feel like I'm not just helping people get out of debt. I'm also helping a lender fine tune their operations so that they can serve their people better. And so at the end of the day, we find out that the clients that actually listen, the clients that actually take the reports, because we get that feedback where clients tell us that, oh, Chika, thank you, your reports brought a lot of insight into some of the things the team should be doing better. And this was not just about collections, it was because we listened. And when we listened, we took their project like a new project and went back to the drawing board, brainstorming with the team what is different about this client. And so there's a unique modus operandi for that client for their project. And then finally reporting. Whatever you don't put out there, in reports in black and white, people cannot know. So you also have to have a way of properly reporting clearly what your observations, are. And then having that meeting. Another thing I would say is consistent engagement with the client. So you can't just have the meeting and then you have to have consistent engagement, bi-weekly meetings, weekly meetings. Who is their contact person? So you are always giving them that heads up. What you find out is most of those clients will not want to leave you. Even if collection drops, one thing they know is that from this team, we get more than collections. From this team, we get more insights. From this team, we find out that they even, when they want to test some of the things we've advised them to test, they say, "Oh, can we just try this?" And we're very open to it, right? Sometimes these things cost money, but we're very open to it. While we're doing that, Karishma, we're trying to build trust over time for you to trust in our services. And it's been good. I've personally seen clients that listen thrive. Yes, I've personally seen clients that listen thrive, and there's some that wouldn't listen. And at the end of the day, you kind of know how they would end, but you're like, well, okay, you know what? I'll offer the service regardless. I'll give you the advice regardless. And at the end of the day, I can't force your hand, but I would at least share with you, and then you would know.
And do you think having a cause attached to what you do makes a difference in that space.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's at the heart of everything. It's at the heart of everything. When we say that we want to get people out of debt, we want to enhance ethical collections, when we say that at the end of the day, for example, we have this ambitious goal, I would say, I want to get 10 million people out of debt by 2030. And so, yeah, so at the end of it, when my team is hearing that it has come into our subconscious that we need to get more people out of there, it's at the core of what we do. It informs how a telecollection officer talks to a borrower, because it's almost like, no, 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 I need to help you. You need to come out of this, because we know what debt can do to a person. The credit system can be helpful, but you also need to know how to manage it so you are not in that space. When you have a cost at the center of your business, it does a lot. It enhances your reputation as a business. So with us, when people say ethical debt collections in Nigeria, within that digital lending space, they know Mwanga. So ethical debt collections. So if you want people, and I've had cases where I've told clients where they say, we want you to go force their hand, and I tell them, I'm like, if you're looking for somebody to go and harass your borrowers, it's not us. You could go to the other people, but this is not what we do, right? You have a brand as ethical debt collectors. You have a brand as people that are really passionate about getting people out of debt. So it enhances your brand reputation. I'm sure if we mention one or two brands here and we say what comes to mind when you hear those brands, you know, so it's something that people know them for. So you should have a cause at the center. It also enhances employee engagement. So the thing is, once your employees are clear about what the cause is, we are trying to drive this. This is the focus. It informs how they do their work. It also informs the initiatives that they bring. One thing about my team is that they stay brainstorming and sharing ideas. Oh, we think we should try this. We think you should try this. But they know that in the middle of that is that main cause. We want to get these people out of debt, and we must do so ethically. So for them, there's certain things that are not an option. So when you do that, that helps. It also attracts the right investors. I think some investors are very clear. This is what they want, impact driven and all that. So it attracts investors. Oh, these people are on this path, right? You attract the right kind of people you want into your business, and just generally that's social impact. I tell you, Karishma, that for me, sometimes being an entrepreneur it can be very tough. Some days you want to really throw in the towel and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm really done. But when you think about what people are going through, like currently, I know in Nigeria for the past, almost 1 year, we've really had a very funny economic downturn, and people are going through a lot. So you can imagine people in debt. So the thing is, we see ourselves as mediators to be able to stand between the borrowers and the lenders to say, we can't push for this now. We need to do a discount initiative. We need to do this. We need to do this. Because if you are not there, the truth is, lenders have the pressure. Lenders are great. The truth is, most lenders are great. But they also have pressures from their investors, you know, and they need to deliver. But who will be there to really drive that narrative to say you must remember that these people, if you want to keep your brand reputation as this type of lender, you have to do this. You can't do this to these people. So at the end of the day, it's the passion really that keeps me. For me, the passion and my people keep me going. If I had no cause at the center of my business, I'll probably have dropped it by now. So it's absolutely like important for you to have a purpose driven business. It drives everything, it drives your operations, it drives your strategy. It's like the anchor. Why are we doing this? It's an important thing every business owner should answer. If you don't know the why, and the why can be money. For some people, I just want to make money. Fine, but I don't know how far that will go. I also have seen people who don't really have a why. Oh, I just want to make money. But over time, the idea latches onto them and they start to form a why. So that also happens. But a why keeps you going. It's even a why that keeps you going to the point where you feel like, oh, even when it's time to exit a business, you need to think about why you chose to start the business in the first place, and if your choice to exit is the best decision for the business at the time. So yes, absolutely, you need to have a cause. That's what I believe.
Now, there's another element of your business, which is the use of technology in a beautiful manner. Tell me, how has that helped you? How has technology helped bring your vision to life?
Well, technology has saved saved me. We would not be able to reach the numbers if we didn't use technology. Every week, my team is reaching out to over 300,000 people every week. We can't do that by manual systems, visitations. If we want to do that, we'll need like a whole army, to do that. So technology helps us scale. Technology also helps us have give better support. So people are calling in, because of technology, as they're calling in, their details are coming up on your screen, or you are calling people details. You are able to offer that help at the time, as opposed to, if it was manual and you had to go and start checking some files. Oh, hold on, let me get your file, that kind of thing. But you are able to offer support at the at an instance. You are able to also help people, because one of the things about debt management is it's not like there are cases we've seen where it's not like the people don't want to repay, but it's just a lot of things happening in their lives. And if you could remind them, if you could just help them organize their, should I say, their schedule, they will make that repayment. And that's where technology helps you. So you can say, okay, you know what, I'm going to make this payment next week Thursday. Okay, next week Thursday we schedule, a promise to pay, we schedule all that, you get a reminder, SMS, you get all those things that prompt you to do what you ought to do, right? So how we try to use technology to provide, better support. So there's that scale, there's better support, there's also clarity. With technology, you can gather your data together and really see what is going on. I always say that the details is in the data. The details is in the data, because it's amazing how the data defines the strategy that you're going to use to run, the business. What I found out is that for a team like us, we're very agile. So a change in the data, and we're quickly moving to say, okay, we need to switch on this thing we do quickly. But if you don't have technology to help you gather the, okay, like how many people have you called so far? How many people have repaid? How many agents were on call? How many, all those type of things to sit back and make an informed decision. If you don't have technology, that means you have to manually put this together, which takes time. And because you've taken time, you would have lost on a lot of opportunities. I've moved Mwanga with my team from a very manual stage to a stage where we're relying on technology. And I can tell you that we're able to reach more, we're able to do more, we're able to use numbers to decide better. On it. So it helps with clarity on the business and your data. It helps with better support. It even helps your team, because once the team is seeing what they have achieved by the use of technology. Oh, I did this at the end of the week. I was able to cover this. People feel inspired, but it's fun. It's different when you are working blind and you really don't know the extent of the work you've done. So technology really helps a lot. It helps you scale. Brings clarity in the business, gives the customers better support, and it can only get better. So you have to. It's not static. It has to be something that's dynamic. So you have to keep working on how to improve the technology. You have to make sure that you can do even more for less time. Something like that. Yeah.
As a female founder who started off years ago, do you think the scenario has changed in any way?
Hmm, that's a very emotional question. Well, my space is very male dominated. I think that when it even comes to ethical collections, yeah, Mwanga was first, in the scene, and others started to come in. We had BPOs that were trying to do that, but for just focused on collections, Mwanga first. So the industry is pretty much still the same, I would say. I don't really have a lot of women around, um, but I'm never phased, and by that, I always tell my team when I'm on any call with clients, I don't box myself into a gender. At that point, I'm having the call with you, and you would respect the work we have done because we know what we do and we do it well. However, I'm very happy that more women have come into the startup space. I mean, the number of women that were there in 2018 till now, we have women doing amazing things, health tech, ed tech. We have women doing amazing, and it's just interesting when you see the news pops up, like maybe there's an investor, there's a raise, and it's a woman, and then you're just excited to say, "Go, girl!" You're doing that, and it's just interesting, and you feel encouraged because you're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So more women are coming into the space. So I think it's not as lonely, as it is. I would just really want to see more women. However, what I do is, even if my space is male dominated, I look at the women within. So when I started Mwanga, I remember that my first solid team for the first 1 month were all female. And I'm telling you, women have been, that's a story for another. Women have been a major backbone for me running Mwanga. And it's not intentionally done. What I mean is, I'm not just saying I'm only hiring women. No, women have proven, and they've helped even from telecollection officers, head of operations, HR. Women have been great of, and external support as well. I've received that for women. So what I do is, within my team, when I see people, especially women that are really doing well, how do you encourage them to come up? Our current chief of staff is female and she's fantastic. How do you encourage them to do more? How do you help them break that mindset to say, this is not about gender. You must be excellent. You must push, yourself. So I give them that room to grow. I give them that room to innovate. So I give them that room to lead initiatives, because I want to be able to show that off and say, hey, she's good, and you should give her you should give her flowers. So as much as possible, I try to do that a lot with the women within, and say, while I wait for more women to come into the space, I have women within my system. How do I encourage them? And I'm very impressed, with how the growth of some of them, even those that have even left to go to other places. I think, their growth is very impressive. I think female founders can do more in terms of really building intentional support systems. So, um, as much as possible, even if we're doing the same type of business, there should just be that support system, that is very intentional, that I would love to see female founders do. I know some people are doing that. We have some organizations here in Nigeria and all that, but we want to, see more. But yeah, that's it. It's lonely, but I instead of being lonely at the top, I look at my team and I'm like, yeah, I see the women in there. We're going to rally around together and do it. Yeah.
Hey, what would you say about financial inclusion since you started? Have you noticed a difference?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. 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 I am so amazed by the growth of, there can be more done because we're still around 64%, 65% inclusive here in Nigeria. There can be more, and I think it has to do with, how do you get the unbanked, like also focusing on the unbanked people. How do you get them into this financial institution circles? And I think that's really where the digital lenders, most of them are turning into, like their neobanks, turning into neobanks or digital banks are doing, just going to touch on those spaces. So a lot of them have come in, and I think as last year or early this year, we had over 100, lending apps on Google Apps, that here in Nigeria. So, and this is over, I think over 100, almost 200, I think 220, 211 thereabout. So there are a lot of people coming into this space. So if you want access to credit, you want credit in less than 30 minutes, numerous apps are there. So that space has grown. However, remember that it's an ecosystem. So while you have the lenders that are there also needs to be a lot of work on the regulation of the lenders, just so that, because borrowers can easily get to be praised of the wrong lenders. Not all lenders are great, but lending is a good thing for what is happening in our space, but there will also be bad eggs. So how do you make sure the regulation is tied to protect both the lender and the borrower? Right? So not just the borrower. So protect the borrower because their data is being released to the lender. And I know that currently we have the Data Privacy, Act, where lenders are required to do the audit and submit. So just really enhancing that. And then how are they regulated? How do you ensure that borrowers also are forced to be responsible to pay? And how do you ensure that lenders can't go, you can't charge some ridiculous rate, for lending, right? So there's a regulator that affects it. So while there is growth, the problem with that growth, and while the growth may be facing a lot of issues with maybe repayments, is there's also a regulatory aspect, that should be done. And I also think that the lenders need to work more. I know that they have, their associations, but they need to work better to kind of give guardrails around how they would run their practices, so that within those guardrails, they know that they're following very ethical practices to provide funding for these borrowers. But there's been a growth. There's actually been a growth. We just need to regulate it so it doesn't go off or overboard,
And
with
it's
it.
the case,
Yeah,
I think, with this era itself, right? There's so much of
yeah,
innovation, and now there's a conversation around how do you kind of make it ethical? How do you govern it? What
yeah,
kind of regulations that you put in place? So I think it's
yeah.
hopefully getting there someday.
Yeah, yeah. Even in the emergence of AI, a lot of people are bringing that into business. AI, machine learning. There needs to be guardrails, because we might overdo these things and then get ourselves into trouble. So regulation is very key, and I think regulation, for such an important space like financial inclusion, regulation needs to be brought in so that people don't rip the system, and also so that borrowers don't take advantage of lenders. You also have to be able to put the guardrails. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
How did business school help in this? Are there any tips that you can share for entrepreneurs who are kind of looking out there to get the right degree? I've heard from many people, people have mixed opinions about an MBA nowadays. They think whether it's really worth it. What do you have to say to it?
Hmm. A business school. So when I was one of the reasons why I went to business school was, I'd run in Nigeria for a while, and I felt that if we had to scale to the rest of Africa, if we had to do more, I needed to learn how to run business globally. There are just different practices and all of those things. And I went there. I would say the business school is, for me, was and I used to tell people this, that is what you really make of it, right? I went to Oxford, and I would always define Oxford as a chocolate factory, right? So
Wow,
you go in there, yeah, you go in there and you pick what you want, but you need to know what you want. For me, I wanted to learn how to run business globally. I wanted to, just learn more. So I knew that I had to be delving towards a lot of entrepreneurship related, electives, or engage more with co-curriculars that had to do with startups and all those type of things. And it was good. We had this program in Oxford. It's called the Creative Destruction Lab, CDL, run by Thomas Hellman. Very good. And you get the opportunity to kind of work with startups of different spaces. There's fintech, AM, I think artificial intelligence, and all that. I worked, with a startup in fintech, and I was very particular to choose a startup that was doing something interrelated with what I was doing. So you can pick the startups you want, but at the end of the day, well, they get to give you what they can give you. But I was lucky; I got a startup I wanted, and I learned a lot from what they were doing, because what they were doing, if it's encouraged, it could actually really help with even the lending ecosystem, right? So that was for me. There was also a course called Entrepreneurship Project, also run by Thomas Hellman in Oxford. An entrepreneurship project was very good because you get to literally hire your mates, your classmates,
oh,
to work on a business idea, yes, with you. And so it was like a project. So remember, I'd mentioned, I know, I think I've mentioned this to you before the call, about a spin-off product that we've been building for over a year now. And because I felt that that was going to take the impact of Mwanga to another level, right? But I needed to sit with a set of fresh minds, because there's something about self-review, you're blindsided. So I'm like, let me speak to people, let me work with people. And I was very intentional. I needed someone who understood the Nigerian financial institution space. I needed a program manager. I needed, I just got the people I needed, poached, pitched, and then got a team. And we worked on the idea. We did our pitch deck, and it was clear that we took the idea to another level, and we did proper research, and we took the idea to another level. So I would not have gotten that for free. Imagine Oxford, some of the brightest of minds you have in the world, right there, and you poach them to help you brainstorm on an idea you have and present it. I wouldn't have the money to hire them, on a normal day. Do you understand? So I got to hire them for free, and that was what the business school did for me. So I would say that business schools, I've heard a lot of people say, well, it wasn't great, it wasn't whatever. What I would first say is, what is it you want to achieve from the business school? I wanted to learn how to run business globally. I wanted to improve my network because I felt like, I needed to know more people and whatever. And I think I also needed that gap here to just go back to the drawing board and just work on my brain and then just come out. So I needed those things, right? And so when I went in there, I knew I had to tilt towards things that were going to build me as an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurship related co-curricular courses. I was, I'm a school scholar, so it was easy for me to work with the school foundation on impact-driven things because my MO is being impact-driven, and so it was. I tilted to that. Now we had so many co-curriculars, so many events, so many, and you can't go for everything. So for me, it was I knew what I wanted. I got in there and I just said, you know what, this even before I got into Oxford, I did some research. So this is what I want to do. These are the competitions I want to be a part of, and that is it. And at the end of the day, I would say that I came out at least scaling up my idea, to another level. So I would say that for people that want to go to the business school, especially entrepreneurs, what do you want from it? It could actually be that, you know what, I think this business school is great and they have access to investors that can help me. So you need to now find out what are the programs that they do for startups to engage startups with their investors. I need to be a part of that. So you have to be very strategic. Oh, I want to have a network. So you want to have a network. When you go into the business school, what do you do? I would advise that if you want to build your network and you want to go into the business school, when you go into the business school, it's not just about going for classes. Take on a role. Um, Apply to be part of the student council, a position that makes you visible.
Yes.
Apply to lead an alliance, apply to lead a club. Oh, I lead the entrepreneurship club. And when you do, because you are the one of the co-chairs of such entrepreneurship club, you can easily use that to make introductions to prominent, people that can come in and speak and say, hey, I lead this club and I want, you to come and talk to the MB and all that. You know that as the co-chair, you get first-hand opportunity to have interactions with these people. You're building your network. So how strategic are you about it? You have to do your homework. So, what do you want? And find a school that aligns with what you want. I think that was for me, my case with Oxford. I wanted a school that was going to teach me about businesses, global businesses, a school that was very inclusive because I'm African, and I'm like, I'm coming all the way and I'm a woman. So I wanted a school that was inclusive. And I think Oxford was tick, 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 for me, very big on impact, very supportive of, women, um, a lot of entrepreneurship, platforms, VCs, all those type of things. So Oxford was perfect for me. Another school that would have also worked for people in this land can be Stanford. I hear Stanford does a lot with entrepreneurs. So look for what works for you. With what you want, go and look for a business school that has a similar interest. And then when you do that, do your research, and it will be what you make of it. Basically. So.
What kind of effort did you have to take, especially when you have a full time career going on and in the middle of all that you decide, okay, now I need to again start.
Ah, I'm sure people will be like, "Oh, Echika, I think a miracle worker," but it was. I think for me, I knew it was going to be a tough year because I had Mwanga. I knew I needed to go to business school at that time. What the gap was clear. You need to learn how to do this if you're going to go. You need to do the gap was clear. So I think on two fronts, I'll talk about the business front. For the business front, I knew that for me to spend time at business school, my company had to have a plan for it to run smoothly. So restructuring, right? And so for me, there were a lot of exercises we had to do the months before I even left for the business school. And then I had appointed my chief of staff actually was is my first hire at Mwanga. She was the first staff I hired in Mwanga. She's been with me to date. So she wasn't chief of staff then, but chief of staff, a fantastic lady. Shout out to you, COS. So and yeah, so I rearranged, the structure. My head of operations was very good, and all that. And so we kind of had a new focus to say, hey guys, because I'm not going to be here physically, and the team has always known how to run operationally. So this is your focus. So chief of staff, this year. So almost like drawing up, redesigning a new set of OKRs for the leadership, and so that way, everybody knew what to do, even in my absence. They'd always known, but just being clear that you would not see me For the next one. You probably only catch me on calls when we have our catch up calls, but you would not see me physically. And so when we did that, what I did was to we did that, and then but we started to work on this new OKRs about maybe latest 2 months before. So everybody started to kind of fit into their, especially the chief of staff, she started to fit into her role before I left. So she worked a lot with me, did that and all that. And so she was easing into it. Right. So that was, that. But I knew that when we had an agreement, oh, you would have calls from, on these days, and that I had the things I still had to do while I was in business school because I couldn't totally just abandon all the work. There were some jobs that still had to sit with me with that. But talking to clients, pitching a new client and all that, it left my table. They could do it. I didn't need me. Now, on the business school front, for you to be able to get such, for me to be able to have gotten such an opportunity, obviously you apply, right? You apply. But one thing I think helps is if you can find an an alumni from the school you want to go to. And maybe someone who has kind of worked similar paths may be helpful if you'd find. And just have conversations around how was the application process, all those type of things. For me, my friend is an alum, and it really helped me in thinking through the application process. One thing I noticed in my Oxford application process was, I just really had to tell my story well. There are a bunch of essays you have to write. And I always tell people when people say, am I, I get people come to me and say, Chika, do you think I can get in? Am I the kind of person? And I say, tell me your story. And when they do, I'm like, look at that beautiful story right there. Like, I'm like, you just need to, it's really storytelling. You need to be able to tell your story and tell the truth. Tell your story in the best way possible. You will be amazed. I remember the young lady who had reached out to me, and I was able to, we walked through her story. She didn't get into, Oxford. However, she got into a school abroad that gave her scholarship, that same year. And her story felt like, will it even be worth anything? But I'm like, you're literally feeding people lives. Tell your story. So if you have a story, tell your story, coin it, and maybe find right people around you that can go through your essays to give you, feedback about it. And so once you do that, walk through that process with this, alumni. Talk to maybe one, two, three alums. Well, I'm trying to do this. What do you think? What are your thoughts and all that? And get right into it. If you do that, at least with that, level of guidance, you should be able to get, to somewhere. And don't be discouraged even if you don't get into, some of these very big schools. There are other schools too that are equally, good, and maybe there are hidden gems that you don't know about. But just keep doing it. But tell your story. So I think at that point when I got there, I got to Oxford. I knew that, I also had to I try to understand that I wasn't going to operate like the regular student. The reason is I had a startup and I had staff. I had this, and so I didn't have some of the time my classmates had, right? But it was fine because I was able to really organize myself. And one of the things I did from the word go was I remember that I always tell myself that I killed FOMO a long time ago. So I killed FOMO from the time I got to business school. I may not be able to make those gatherings. I would just choose the gatherings I know I must make. And even while being in the business school, I led the Oxford Africa Business Alliance with another coach. There were two that led it, myself and Kennedy Kipeka from Kenya. And so we led it, and there were other, little things. But what I'm trying to say is, for me, I knew that because I had more balls in my hands, I needed to be more intentional about my time in the business school, right? And so that I think is the part for startup, entrepreneurs to go because you are already dealing with a lot, and it's not easy to run a company.
My last question to you, Echika, is what do you most look forward to at this point?
Ooh, what do I most look forward to? Getting those 10 million people out of debt, at least 10 million out of debt. Getting them out of debt is what I look forward to. I look forward to the stories of people talking about how the support was the best thing that ever happened to them, and how they were able to not only repay what they were owing but even learn how to take credit and work their way through an easy repayment without getting into default. And just a world where um, a human being can dream an idea, and if they just need funding to bring the idea to life, it's very easy to get the right funding from the right people. and get out of it. It may sound like a perfect world, but I believe that we can get there, with time. People should be able to bring their ideas to life, great ideas, and people should feel some sense of financial freedom or financial support, the level of support, from the right institution. So getting those people out of debt, and also I think in addition we have this CSR that Mwanga does. It's called the Alpha Academy. It's like another arm, like another business that we run, and the goal there is to get young people employed. And so it was part of what it was felt for Mwanga, because when we started to build and our team started to grow, we grew to like over 100 people. I started to see how we were able to get young people, school leavers, train them within a month, and then they became good jolly collection officers. I'm like, well, if we could do this, we'd get a lot of people off the streets, right? So how do you get those people employed? That kind of thing. So I think it's just a world where people can dream and know that their dreams will not be held back by certain recall.
More power to you. May you achieve that goal someday very, very soon. Thank you so much for sharing your story
Yeah.
with me. It's been a pleasure, Echika.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.